This is a Merrick Studios podcast. This week on Two Mothers, One Aché.
Grief often sends us searching. We search very often in grief. We search for meaning, we search for connection, and we search for something that's bigger than ourselves.
Welcome to Two Mothers, One Aché, a grief dialogue. I'm Dionne.
And I'm Yvette. We're mothers, friends, and sisters in grief.
I lost my daughter, Siwe, at 15 years old.
And I lost my son, Dasan, at 26.
This podcast is our space to talk about grief, how it shapes us, how it lingers, and how love carries us through. Welcome to the conversation.
Hey, girl.
Hey.
How are you?
How you doing?
I'm good. I love you so much.
I love you so much.
I'm just going to start at the top with that. That's the energy. That is the energy that I want to step into this with today.
Aché. Yes.
I wanted to resonate because we need it in the world. So
we need it in the world, and we got stuff to cover. So
that's right. You know what? Can I engage in a slightly different way at the top of this before we get to our breathing exercise and opening up the Aché? A clip from a Cardi B interview came across my desk this morning.
Okay.
And I found it extremely important to discuss.
Absolutely.
And I found it very intriguing and timely.
Okay, go for it. You know, I love me some Cardi B. So yes.
It was nothing that nobody could say.
Okay.
Like I even talked to Shakira and I was like, how do you get over this funk?
Yeah.
And she was like, it takes time, but it's like, it almost felt like whatever people experience when they going through like withdrawal and like they're throwing up, like I feel like I was withdrawing love. And I'm not even trying to sound exaggerated, like, cause I can't eat.
Yes.
I can't sleep. I can't think. I can't work. I can't even look at my kid's face because it's like, I just want to cry just looking at him. Like, cause I can't go out. I don't want to see daylight. I don't want to see nothing. Like, I just couldn't. And when you know you're done, I don't know what it is. You just know that it's done in you. It just dies in you. But when it dies, it's very painful.
Oh, Cardi.
And you just ain't going, you can't go back no more. It's dead.
Well, I'm very proud of you. Here we are in the clouds sitting on red, tufted couches made of love. And that's what we gonna get into.
What we just witnessed was a woman describing grief.
Absolutely.
And she did an eloquent job of that. She was very detailed. I felt like I was in the room with her, watching her reel from the pain of grief. However, yes.
I love that you brought this up today. It relates so deeply to our last episode. So thank you for bringing that in, bringing Cardi B because she's from the Bronx and the Bronx. So yeah, that was perfect. And yeah. All right.
So what we discussed in our last episode was identifying grief and why it is important to identify the grief in order to get you to a place of healing. And so I wanted to share that with everyone because it's real time, it's real emotions, and what you and I are providing is language and a path to healing.
Absolutely.
So I also want to just extend, I mean, not that Cardi will probably ever see this, but you know what, we could put it out there like, you know, hey sis, hey. But, you know, I want to stand with her. I want to acknowledge her grief and the pain. You know, just to reiterate, grief doesn't always come from the death of a loved one. It can come from divorce, which was, you know, Cardi's case. So with that said,
resonates with me.
Tune in, continue to tune in. We're giving you amazing tools and gems. And, you know, we're leading it with love. So with that, sis, let's
you know,
open up the circle.
It works out perfectly as you're talking. You'll see me. Those of you that are watching the YouTube version, if you're on Spotify, I love that for you. But if you head over to YouTube, you can see our shenanigans and how animated we are. Real talk. But
Fact.
I actually stopped and took a deep breath because I could feel what she was going through. And I remember going through divorce and I remember that ache. And then also, even prepping what we're going to talk about today, I want to make sure we breathe into it before we start. So if you're new to us, I'm Dionne C. Monsanto, the co-host of Two Mothers, One Aché, a grief dialogue. And
Right. And I am Yvette Love Davila, the co-host of Two Mothers, One Aché, a grief dialogue. And we're so, so happy and honored to have you here with us today.
we love breathing. I'm a yoga teacher, and we're both really embodied practitioners in everything that we do. So we're going to pause and take a few deep breaths. Some of you have been here for the past few episodes and know you may need a box of tissues. So we're going to ground ourselves first. If you're driving, keep your eyes open, please and thank you. If you're at home somewhere and you're able to put your feet solid on the ground, place one hand on your heart, place one hand on your belly, and possibly close your eyes, and we'll simply take 3 deep breaths.
Dee, while you're doing that, I'm going to light a candle in ritual for our loved ones. It'll all tie in, but please proceed.
Okay, got it. Take a deep breath in and out. One more time, inhale. Exhale. One more time, slow and deep. In. Sigh it out. Woo. Those 3 deep breaths can be magic in your life. And then you can say you practice yoga because you practice breathing exercises. Voila. All right. You just lit a candle. Thank you for lighting a candle. I do have one lit off screen so you don't see it. But knowing that we have a candle lit and today's topic, why don't you tell the good people what we're going to talk about today?
Today, we're talking about rituals, memorializing our loved ones, anniversaries, those days that are really, really hard because it's a birthday or it's an anniversary of a passing, or, your wedding day that ended up in divorce eventually. There's so many, they end up being triggers. So we're going to deep dive into some of the things that you can do to express love, admiration, reverence for your loved one, their memories. Grief doesn't end when the funeral is over.
Or when the divorce papers come in.
Or when the divorce papers come in. Love asks us often to remember again and again and again. So what do rituals do? They help us carry our people forward. They help us carry the love forward. They help us carry those memories, which are steeped in love. At some point, they were steeped in love.
Absolutely. And I'm thrilled that we're talking about that today, looking at, where we are in the calendar year and what's going on. And when you're looking at whether I say holy days, so whether holy days are coming, and I often believe every day is holy if you make it holy, but that can be a really difficult time. And for me, 14 years ago, it was very big. So myself, another coach that lost her husband in New York over 9/11, and another coach that had gone through natural death as a widow, her husband passing. The 3 of us collaborated and did a workshop on what you do to honor the holidays and as well as the anniversaries. So I think they're very much similar. And you heard Evie say, as we did the breathing, that she paused and told me she was going to light a candle and that you would get it later on. So candle lighting is one way to give light to an energy, a presence, an ancestor that's no longer there. And every time I've been speaking to you, there's been a candle lit off camera for me. something that I can focus on, something that I can gaze on. Fire gazing is also another way of meditating. But when I think of the 14 years that my daughter's been gone, her birthdays and the death anniversaries, every birthday, I'm like, oh my God, I survived another birthday without you. But on that birthday, she gets a cake. I live in the Heights. I go to Carrot Top Bakery and I get a red velvet cake dipped in chocolate because they're things she loved. It goes up in front of her picture. I put a candle in it. It's set there and I'm like, happy birthday, girl. Like she would have been 29 this year. And it's a way that I bring forth the good memory that I had of giving birth. What do you do for Dasan's birthday?
I get really cranky. I ain't gonna lie. I ain't gonna lie, sis. So I try to disconnect from the outside world. I often cook his favorite food. Here we go. I often cook his favorite food, which was salmon, stewed salmon and onions, and I have dubbed it Dasan salmon. The whole family knows, like, when I make Dasan salmon, that we're honoring him and his favorite dish. White rice and some bacon. He ate pork, we didn't, so I'll make turkey bacon with it. And usually broccoli. And then I take a plate of it and I lay it on my altar, which is where all of my ancestors, their energy lives. My altar is like a universe and a big honor. It's a place where I honor my ancestors as well as, be in reverence to my spirits and my spirit guides. And
Girl,
so, yeah.
I'm over here trying not to jump in. I feel like I'm in double Dutch, like waiting to jump in, because when you said that Dasan salmon, and it was salmon and onions with red rice, so we don't eat beef. So Siwe's dish, when I do the food, was, and even within my cultural family, my spiritual family, they'll ask me, what are the foods she likes? And mine is salmon, but I call it salmon gravy because instead of, yes. So instead of doing corned beef hash, I would take the canned salmon and shred it so it becomes like a salmon hash, but it's over grits instead of white rice. So it's salmon and onions with grits.
I make it with grits for Chris. I put Chris's salmon on top of grits. And I'm going to tell you something. Dasan's grandfather taught me how to make that dish. He made that dish. A beautiful Bayesian man, Rudy. And I'm going to honor Rudy today. I'm going to call his name out. Rudolph Lavelle from Barbados. Taught me how to make this salmon because he used to make it for Dasan, and Dasan loved it so much. And he would also put it on top of grits, but Dasan preferred the white rice.
I love this.
Isn't that amazing?
I love just the commonalities that we're learning about real time. We are not making this up, fam. I didn't know that. She didn't know this, but I love that you brought in Rudy and how you learned to make it. And then you mentioned altar a couple of times, so I'm going to dial it back a bit because maybe some of our listeners have altars, maybe some don't have altars. So as a part of the ritual for remembrance, setting up a certain place in your house, and it could be really small. It could be one part of your kitchen counter. It could be a separate table, and you can have a candle, a glass of water, and a picture. And eventually, as Evie said, that hers is a whole universe, you may have multiple pictures. Various friends and family within, my cultural tradition will have a whole table, or they may have a separate room, a part of a closet. There are lots of ways to do it. Again, I love me some Googleelo, so you can go to Googleelo. You can DM us, you can ask us, you can email us, because we have altars. We love altars, and it's a good way to memorialize your family, and loved ones and things. And I love setting a seat at the table. There was one year in my 14 years and talking about it, a tradition that we learned, and I can't remember from where, is that when you're sitting down to have whatever special meal, it could be your Sunday dinner, it could be a special holy day, but you'll set a table, and that seat, although it's empty, is a dedicated empty seat for your loved one. And you could have a picture there. And to show that, I made sure I have a picture that I can show you that's propped up so you can see it. So this can just sit there. It's a picture of my daughter at 2 different stages in her life. So if I set the table, then the place where she would be sitting, I would put her picture. But there'll be a place setting, and her meal is there until her meal goes to the altar. So
that
that's
is so beautiful. That is so beautiful. That is such a special way of memorializing especially during family gatherings, like during the holidays. Our babies both transitioned in June, and I do Thanksgiving big around here. You guys I'll continue to reveal my many hats, but I'm a trained chef. And so cooking big meals is actually a delight for me. And I can have anywhere from, 30 to 50 people in this house. And for Thanksgiving. And so that first Thanksgiving, I purposely kept it smaller. I set my boundaries. I knew that it was going to be it was uncharted territory for me. So what I did was I brought down my altar. I brought the table down, and I put it right at the entryway of the dining room. And I encouraged everyone to come by and say hi to Dasan, to leave a gift for him, whether it's food or candy or whatever. And, I encourage the family just to feel his presence. I asked them to, please come in, feel his presence, and not act like he, isn't gone, but don't write him off as unattainable.
Yeah,
like you can reach him if you wanted to.
And I'm sure you've seen the movie because I've seen it multiple times, but we talked about it also in the last episode. And so when I think of cultural remembrances and how they happen in different countries or in different places or tradition, as we bring out and talk about altars and food and candles, I would be remiss if we didn't mention Dia de los Muertos, right?
Yes.
So the Day of the Dead. And in the movie Coco, I'm like, I be plugging things that I love. They really talk about in the spirit world that they feel honored and they're a part of the family and they're watching and they're with you. And this may or may not be your spiritual belief, but again, speaking and representing Caribbean, Black and brown people, these are major traditions around the world. And as long as we call their names and we make space for them in our lives and keep them present. Some people do things like Evie and I have gotten tattoos as an honor and remembrance of people that we have lost, particularly our children. And with Dia de los Muertos, the putting the food out and calling them in, and I keep mentioning this particular children's movie because all the great education happens in those children's movies. We get an actual seeing and feeling of what it is of when a spirit actually dies. And it's not when we bury them. It's not when we cremate them. It was when no one was feeding them, lighting candles for them, or calling their names. And then they completely disappear into their ethers. So the calling of the names is crucial for our cultural remembrances and for the ancestors that we've lost. And that's why Evie and I felt like it was so important to bring it into this grief dialogue and end with those names. So keep those names coming to us.
Yeah. I also, I really appreciate a couple of things in the way that the Jews deal with grief and their process. They hurry, like it feels like it's very quick that they bury them. Right? It's like they're supposed to bury them within a very short amount of time. I think it's either 24, 48 hours, right? And And from my understanding, that's so that way, you could get the grieving process started, right? And you're not kind of sitting in limbo with it, right? Then they sit Shiva,
Yes.
which when they, that is asking community to come in. And what you're doing is you're talking about the loved one that passed away. You're calling their name. You're sharing the stories, right? You're sharing community. You're sharing food. These are all rituals that don't only sit in the Jewish culture, right? Like, this is something that we do in Christian culture, particularly Catholicism. We do a novena. It basically is the same way, except we pray together.
And that was the first time I learned of it when my son's grandmother died. So his father's mother. So he was a baby. He was about 4 months old when she passed. So that was my first time participating in the novenas in East Harlem, with the rosaries and everybody in the house. And that was my first time. So that was 31 years,
not like
32
a one
years
night.
ago.
That's
No,
1 week,
it was
2
9.
weeks. Like, it depends on how we did a novena. We did a virtual novena for Dasan, 14 days, right? And then the last thing about the Jewish culture that I truly, truly, truly appreciate, when they say, may their memory be a blessing. So when someone passes, they say, so I would say, may Siway's memory always be a blessing. I love that phrase, that saying, that direction, right? I love that.
And we'll be right back.
I'm Bun B. I'm a host and a co-owner at Merrick Studios, and we just took things to the next level. Merrick Studios Plus is live, so tap in at wearemerrickstudios.com, get 65% off, and don't just listen, be a part of the show.
Master the art of lyricism with Pendulum Mink, the first school for rap. Learn elite techniques through immersive lessons, real-world exercises, and guidance from hip-hop icons. This is where MCs sharpen their skills and glow boldly on the mic. Ready to level up? Visit pendulummink.com and start your journey today.
And now, back to the show.
I have a dear friend that is, is Jewish, and she practices, and she does say that. And we did lose someone within another land-based community, and she said, "May his memory be a blessing." And I did not realize she is Jewish. I've known her since she was a teenager, but I didn't know why she said that. So I love that I'm still learning from you. We talked about birthdays. We talked about even the candle lighting loss. That
I have
something.
a question for you. Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Which date is hardest for you? Why? And has it changed over 14 years?
First of all, you need to get out of my head, because I was getting ready to talk about the death anniversaries. And the death anniversary is the one that is horrific for me. Unlike you, I'm not cranky on her birthday, although I don't share it with her. It was such a great day. I have such great memories of the day. I love telling that story, her birth story. But the day of her death, and it's hard for me to even say the date without saying the day of the week, because it was a Wednesday. So my brain always thinks Wednesday, June 29th, 2011. It's one phrase, it's one word in the Entizaki Shange word of like running it all together, because it's one big emotion. And over the years, what I have attempted to do, since my baby lived for 15 years and she's now been gone 14 years, I am desperately, like almost as if my life depends on it, creating good memories on that day. So I would be with family, and my niece is only 20. She'll be 21 this year. So she was little when she died. I think that might have been her first funeral, her first major death and major loss. And going to the movies with her, really looking into her light and showing up, and often a kid's movie, often a Disney Pixar movie, but something like that. But absolutely do not work. Do not make plans. Do not do anything that would force me to show up in a way that I could not be how I am because I don't know how I'm going to be. I cannot plan my emotions. So I might be good. I might not. I might be a blithering idiot for half the day, snot nose, ugly cry. I might not want to get out of bed. So a movie towards the end of the day. So it is absolutely the anniversary of her death. And it was a business coach that I had years ago. I was working on a program. Like currently I have a group coaching program. I've done individual coaching, and you're planning throughout the year, and somehow or another in your planning, like we know holy days are coming. We know the death anniversary is coming. And in my innocence, I'm making plans about what I was going to do in June. And when my brain and my body, because even before June 29th, things start to slow down earlier in the weeks that precede it, and I start to slow down. My brain starts to become a little foggy. It's like there's padding or cushion, as it were. And it was a coach that said to me, and she, while she was a business coach, had this, like us, very spiritual, intuitive aspect to her. And she advised me, and this might be 5 or 6 years ago, that I needed to create a business policy that I don't launch new programs, and it might be a good time just to vacation. And so that I've started doing that I will travel that week, or it's a week off. So I have cushion around that time. And if I am traveling, often I work retreats. I'll be the yoga teacher on a retreat or movement support. And I'll tell them before I sign this contract, I cannot work on this day. Even if it's a 7-day retreat, I will not be participating in anything on this day. And
I love that you do that you go away, because it's allowing you to also create new memories. Not that the memory of her passing will not always be there and be difficult, but this allows you to now develop a cachet of memories during the same time that will allow you to be in remembrance just a little gentler. And I
yeah,
love that you do that for yourself.
yeah.
That's beautiful. For me, it is Christmas, New Year, that week between Christmas and New Year, for several reasons. I always have this memory when Chris and I first started dating, and Dasan had just met him, but Chris and I have been dating for a very long time, almost a year and a half. And I invited Chris to spend the night with us for Christmas Eve, because I would always cook for Noche Buena, Christmas Eve, for
Mm-hmm.
those that don't know. And so I invited Chris to spend the night with us. And Christmas morning, we opened up gifts together. And Chris gave me some really beautiful, very generous gifts. For somebody who, we've been dating under 2 years, and I started crying. And Dasan came right over to me and comforted me. And Chris,
Yeah.
to this day, Chris doesn't know what to do with my tears, right? So he's just like, why is she crying? Like, what's going on? And Dasan looked at Chris and said, well, she never gets gifts. She's always the
Wow.
one who gives gifts,
Wow.
but she never receives them. And, it's been that my whole life, really, like we were poor. I didn't, I didn't have a lot growing up. And so that memory is a recurring memory just in general around the holidays. And Dasan's birthday is January 5th, right?
Mm-hmm.
So right on the tail end of Christmas. And I would always tell him, I'm never going to, I will always separate Christmas and your birthday. You'll never feel like you get cheated out, right? And so, for me, when I was a single mom, it would be months and months and months of like saving up so that way he can have both. And, and just even into adulthood, I made a big deal out of each individually for him. And it just feels as if that energy that I kept up for many years doesn't have a place to go.
Mm. And we said that in the last episode too. Grief is love with no place to go. So that makes so much sense that that energy has no place to go now. And it was so much a part of your life. Thank you for sharing that. I love that we get to share so openly with our listeners and become closer as moms, grievers, and friends. I want to ask our listeners. I mean, I know you're there. You may be sitting on the edge of your seat like me, but I'm really curious for you. And I'd love to hear from y'all again, whether it's on social media, email, voice messages. How do you honor your loved ones? What are the things that you do within your family that you learned from someone? And what are you willing to do? How can you create space for this? Because I think in the same way you just talked, Evie, about saving, like you saved up for months to make sure as a single parent that you could do both. Like we know these days are coming. And so much a part of it as, if you say Christmas and Thanksgiving and birthdays. Birthdays are big for me. Christmas and Thanksgiving aren't big for me, but I'm big on Kwanzaa. So that was the other one. If we're talking a holy day, we do a big Kwanzaa celebration in my home. And that one, the biggest one, had 75 people. But unlike you, I am not a chef and I make it a potluck. So
good for you. That's smart, by the way. Because let me tell you, my back, my neck, my back. I mean, everything hurts. Everything hurts. The next day, I could barely move, and I don't eat my own food when I cook that much. So you go figure.
Yeah.
What I'm doing it for. I would love to pivot. If I may.
Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I just want to say the way we plan for everything, and when I was in corporate America, is how you do anything is how you do everything. So if you plan for birthdays, holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, like you've got to plan for these pivotal days, the wedding day, like that. My wedding day was in December. And so that day sometimes has sad memories for me, and I will sit with myself and journal around the wedding day, since I'm not married, I'm single.
Sure, but I mean, that even works if you lose a spouse and your wedding anniversary now, right, is where you would have celebrated the union and the coming together. Now your spouse is no longer there. Again, love with nowhere to go, right? Celebrating the love of your union, you have nowhere to go with that. You and I are, for the folks that don't know, we're really super creative folks. I mean, we were on the poetry circuit together. You dance and you've done theater. I'm more of a visual artist, and even in my cooking, that's culinary arts, right? And so, the arts are very, very, very important to us. I'd love to share a story. The first anniversary of Dasan's transition, so June 11th, 2022, I did, those sip and paints? Like those sip and paint paces? I rented one out. I brought in some fast food that Dasan loved. I'm not giving anybody free advertisement around here. I had catered, and I invited our very, very, very close circle of family and friends, and we did a sip and paint. And Ren, my daughter-in-law, who's a visual artist, she led us in the painting. So she basically taught us, we wanted to do butterflies. And so she was just like, okay, if you want to do a butterfly, then this is how you do it. And she led us in that. And then she was going around to everyone's easel. If they didn't want to do butterfly, they didn't have to. They could do whatever they wanted. And Eva, oh my God, Eva did this painting where there was this black feather coming up and a white feather coming down, and they were touching. And then the sky was the background was like a blue, like the night sky, but you can see lots of blues and blacks, and but the two feathers are touching, like that was her and her brother, right? And so
it reminds me of that creation one where the two fingers touch. I can't
yes,
remember who did that,
yes,
but I
yes.
love that. And that is so brilliant. And I have
So
not done something with
creativity,
art.
right? And I have the canvases, like I have my canvas and I have Eva has her canvas, and my nephew gave me his canvas that he painted. And so they're like creative remembrances that I can walk by. I have them down in my sunroom. Whenever I go to talk to my plants, they're there. They remind me of that day. It's such a beautiful way. And, we put it on the canvas, right? Like, were
Right.
there tears?
Now
Absolutely.
I have to interrupt you. I have to interrupt you because you said something that was really important. And I don't know if you heard yourself say it, but you said you go talk to your plants.
Me too.
And,
I'm a plant
and
lady.
just so you know, Evie does have a sunroom in honor of her son, and there's a beautiful group of plants in there. And that is another tradition that people will often give a plant or plant a tree or create some sort of living memory for our loved one. And it does not have to be at the cemetery or the resting place, but it's the energy going into something. And sometimes, like I did that when my son was born. I didn't do it when my daughter was born, but there are plants as ancestral memory. So with the green thumb that Evie has, she gets to talk to her plants. But I'll invite you as the listener, even if you don't feel like you have a green thumb, behind you, behind us, behind this podcast station, I have a plant. And I have other plants around the house. So you can pick something, a snake plant, they're sturdy. An aloe, also sturdy, doesn't require a lot of water. But you can plant something in honor of your loved one. It doesn't have to be something you feel like you're good at. You don't have to be a good artist. You don't have to have a green thumb. You just have to have love in your heart. And as we keep saying, since grief is love with no place to go, you're creating some place for it to go.
That's right.
On a
That's
canvas.
right. The energy, you're transmuting the energy, you're transmuting the pain into some creative outlet. You're putting it into a creative outlet. If you love music, make a playlist. When
Oh my
my
goodness.
really good friend Dom passed away, I made a playlist. I still have his playlist on my Spotify. You can look it up. Like, it's Dom's playlist. And it was just all of the music. I didn't know what music he actually loved, but it was all of the music that reminded me of him. And I went through my playlist, and like I went through my favorite records, and if a record came up that just, even to this day, if a record comes up that reminds me of him, I throw it into the playlist.
I love that.
There's many, many ways of memorializing, but I think the point is transmuting, or the exercise, I should say it like that. The exercise is transmuting the pain into a creative outlet.
Aché.
That
And
lives
both
on
of
and
us,
on and on.
yeah. And because both of us do that actively. That's one of the master classes that I led this year for several months, April, May, June, July, about 4 months. I did weekly master classes, and they were for me as well as for others. And it was making joy from your pain. It's like you can't bring that back, but you can transmute the energy through the rituals that we've mentioned and more. Even when we did the breathing, that was a ritual. Lighting a candle, the art, all these ways to transform and transmute the grief into something. Every last one of you, our listeners, you're far more creative than you think you are. Because even when you get
That's right.
dressed, there's energy in how you adorn yourself. There's energy. There's a butterfly ring that I'm wearing that I always ring. That was a gift that I always wear. And it was a gift from someone in honor of my daughter, because butterflies are how I see her. So I love that you said you were painting butterflies. But Eva was like, yeah, I'm not doing butterflies. I have another vision. But
That's
I have another vision.
Dionne, so last episode we talked about the stages of grief. One of them is depression. And when you're in depression from due to grief, it throws you on your ass, to put it simply. And sometimes I know I couldn't lift my head from the bed. And some days, especially if it's like his birthday, knocks me out, right? And what can we offer our listeners when you're just too depleted in your pain? How could you still memorialize them, and remember them without it taking you out? What are some things you can do?
Thank you for that. And I will say, and we discussed it also last episode about grace and trying to figure out and giving yourself grace, and grace, that being an action. And I love that you said the WYDD. What would Dionne, WWDD, what would Dionne do? And I honestly will give myself grace. Like, I am one of the mantras. I'm a big fan of mantras. I'm also a big fan of crystals. And writing something, a rapid fire writing, if, picking up a pen and paper, or again, we use our phones for everything, on your notes app to write it out.
Mm-hmm.
I am doing the best I can, and that is enough. And if I am doing the best I can and that is enough, means you are lying down in bed staring at your ceiling, doom scrolling, but give it a time limit is what I would say. On this day, for the birthday, for the death anniversary, whatever it is, to give yourself that time, allow yourself grace. You're just hearing this and you're like, oh, I don't have time to plan something. I don't have money to do a sip and paint. I don't have whatever it is. You can repeat their names. You can close your eyes. You can look at a picture and say, Siwe, I love you. I miss you. I am doing the best I can. And I know that's enough.
Small is sacred.
Aché. Yeah. We definitely want to hear from you. We could go on for another hour talking about other possibilities for rituals, honoring things that you've lost, aspects of yourself, careers, locations, house. We're still grieving the loss of a family house and a fire. There's so many things that you need ritual around to help heal. But we want to hear from you before we close out. Is there anything else you want to add before we take them out?
Oftentimes, it feels harder to memorialize our loved ones because it's as if it's a reliving of the pain over and over and over again. I can only tell you from my lived experience that the energy that I get from memorializing, remembering, saying Dasan's name, the energy carries me through and it heals me. And it makes it an easier, it makes an impossible process possible.
Aché. Thank you for that.
So don't run away from it is what I'm saying, right? Like, actually lean in. That's a saying you like. Lean in. So
Yeah.
I would encourage everyone to lean into those moments.
And choose one micro ritual, one little thing that you heard or learned from us today, and please share it with us. We are so deeply inspired by the listeners, by grievers, and the things that they share that they've heard from us that have inspired them. So please let us know. Okay.
I do. You start our moment of Aché this week, please.
Okay.
Please, because I have a name that I have to look up.
Okay. So again, if you haven't done so already, share names of your loved ones so we can share them as we do our Aché moment and bring their energy into the space. So as you, again, place your hand over your heart and on your belly, and how I just did that micro ritual of sharing my daughter's name, again, I will go through some names, like when I pour libation, some of the names that I say. So calling Pops, Leon Alfredo Monsanto, my grandfather, Bianca Almeid Jackson Monsanto, my grandmother, as well as Lawrence Monsanto, my uncle, then Uncle Chubby or Valdemar Monsanto, and just so many of my direct line ancestors that hailed from the United States Virgin Islands that are not here. Everett Hansen, cousin. So calling their names, and I will pass it over to you.
Thank you. And I want to breathe life into every single name that you mentioned. And I want to thank you for sharing them with us today. So my friend Peter Rosenberg of Hot 97, he wanted me to mention Jeff Costello's name. Jeff Costello was a gentleman who worked at the radio station at Hot 97 here in New York. He worked in the digital department, and he recently passed. He passed last week. So may his memory always be a blessing.
Aché.
I want to re-mention Dasan's grandfather, Rudolph Lavelle, Rudy, we called him, his grandmother, Dasan's grandmother, Brenda White. They raised Dasan for me, with me.
Aché.
You know, I didn't have my own parents, so his biological father's parents helped me, and I'm eternally grateful for what they did for me. My sister Sandy, what a hard life, but what a beautiful soul. She was my protector. She was 8 years older than me and always a great protector of mine. And my mom, Ellie. You know, our producer's name is Ellie, and so I want to bring up my mom, Elba Iris Canino. She hated being called Elba, so I will honor her by saying Ellie. Thank you for the life that you gave me.
Aché.
Aché.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much for all those names. Please keep sending us those names, social media, email, however you reach out to us, and we will share them at the end of the segment. We look forward to seeing you, hearing from you, and keep joining us on this journey because we have so much more to share with you. Aché.
See you next time.
We'd love for you to join the conversation with us on Instagram at 2, that's the number 2, mothers, 1, the number 1, Aché Pod, and produced and distributed by Merrick Studios.
Until next time, may love carry you through.